What is going on, everyone? Today we are installing the Billet Technologies oil catch can on the 2019 Ram. This is actually a re-upload video, so a user by the name of Charlie Hustle pointed out to me that you'll see later in the video here, I have one extra brass fitting for this oil catch can kit. He pointed out to me where that fitting is supposed to go. I must have missed it in all the excitement putting it on the truck, so make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end. I'm going to show you where that goes, how it's supposed to go, and you can kind of make the decision from there. So thanks for pointing that out to me, bud, and we'll get on with this video. Of course, demolished by bird poop as usual. Sweet. Gonna start by popping the hood. All right, now before we dive into the install and review of this product, I'm gonna take a few minutes just to talk about what an oil catch can does and why I went with the Billet Technologies one. For those of you that just wanna get to the install, I'll put in the video description kind of some time marks, timestamps of where you can click to start the install. So essentially what an oil catch can does is all gas engines, at least that I know of, they have what's called a PCV, which is positive crankcase ventilation. Now the PCV valve on these trucks, the Hemis, is in the back passenger side here, and what that does is it's kind of an emissions thing. It vents any of the vapors and everything in the crankcase back into the intake, which is all fine and dandy, but how this works is little bits of oil and oil vapor follow that air out of the PCV valve through this line right here, which goes down and into your intake. So what happens is when that air is coming in, it's also bringing little amounts of oil with it, and that's gonna gum up your throttle body, your intake manifold, could gum up your valves a little bit. So what we're trying to do is catch the oil so that all that's going through that hose is vapor. Also, we're really splitting hairs here, but some people would argue that since the oil and air combination goes back into your intake, that it could potentially dilute your fuel quality. So let's say you have an E85 tune, you got a 1,000 horsepower car, twin turboed, and it's a very precise tune, and you've got a little bit of air and oil going in, that could arguably mess with your fuel mixture a little bit, and you could lose performance from that. I don't know how much, but that's just a theory. So that's basically the theory and operation to a catch can, and why we're doing this is just to prevent everything from gumming up on the intake and hopefully increase the longevity of the engine. Now moving on to why I picked the Billet Technologies. So first I was looking at the JLT one, which actually there's a little bracket that bolts down to this mounting stud for this engine cover, and a little bracket comes out like right here, and the catch can's right here. That was okay with me. The only problem is I've heard of people saying that the bracket that comes straight out hits this engine cover, which I didn't want. Also, the JLT bracket, it's just one little bracket that comes straight out, and it looks like it's about, I don't know, 1/8 inch thick or so. And I just thought that with the weight of the catch can on it, over time with the engine vibrating and stuff, that might weaken the bracket. It just didn't seem like a very sturdy setup in my opinion, but I could be wrong. So if you have a JLT, let me know how you like it and how it fits. Other people could use that information. Next, I was gonna go with the Mishimoto catch can, which actually I believe utilizes like the radiator fan shroud bracketry. It bolts in like somewhere along here, rests in like this area, which again, I don't mind that. It was a decent looking catch can. I actually emailed them asking if we could hook up some sort of partnership, but they said to email their sponsorship team, and of course that would take a while, and I'm impatient. And also the Mishimoto one was the most expensive. It was like $220 or something like that. So then I kind of started looking at the Billet Technologies one here, and that one's only $135 if you get it in the raw aluminum color with just the brass fittings, like the cheapest bare bones one. No braided lines, no color match lines, nothing. So I ordered it for $135, and it was like 17 bucks shipping and handling. So it ended up being like 154 bucks. So basically the cheapest catch can I could find shipped, and it seems like it's good quality. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the install now. As you can see, there's this Z bracket. It's already, this is how it comes. Fittings are already in. Everything's put together like that. So if you want, you could put like a crescent wrench on here and just make sure that these are snug to your liking. Looks like they've got some pipe dope on there. I don't I forgot to bring a crescent wrench home, so I'm just gonna trust them. I can't loosen them by finger, so they gotta have a little bit of tightness to them. And as you see the hole in the bracket here, that's how it mounts. It actually mounts to the cylinder head right here on this threaded hole. I know it's a little hard to see down there. So the first step is going to be to remove our filthy engine cover, which is held in place with two 10 millimeters. One here, one down in this hole. Just going to use my little zip here. I don't know if you saw that, but when I loosened it, this little base that it threads into spun with it, but then the bolt broke loose independently from it. So I'm gonna cinch this down a little bit with a wrench before I loosen this bolt. If this whole thing spins when you're loosening this, you can either just take both of the bolts out and pop the cover off and deal with it then, or you can put a wrench on it. A 1/2 inch wrench will fit here, and you can hold the wrench while you loosen the 10 mil and then snug this back down with a 1/2 inch. All right, go fishing. Now the only thing holding the engine cover in place should be two little plastic studs going front to back, pushed into a little rubber grommet. So you should be able to just kind of lift and pull the cover towards you like that. Yeah, there's those two little tabs. All right, so there's that PCV, positive crankcase ventilation valve, that I was talking about. It's just kind of like a canister, and then you can see the valve itself is just a piece of plastic that twists in place kind of like a light bulb, and it's got a little check ball valve in there that allows the oil and air to flow back into the intake. Now the directions actually say to remove the intake tube here, but I think we can do it without, so I'm going to try that. It'll probably give you a little bit better access, and honestly I could get better filming with it, but I'm just feeling a little lazy right now. So we're gonna go ahead and take this. I'm actually gonna install this, and then we'll worry about the routing of the hoses. Okay, so we're gonna take the provided spacer and 13 millimeter head bolt that's gonna hold the catch can in place. And now this is the only bolt holding this thing on. You know, it's a decent amount of weight. And obviously the engine and the truck are gonna vibrate from normal use. So I'm gonna use a little bit of blue Loctite on the threads, because you can't over tighten this because it threads into the cylinder head, which is aluminum. So you don't wanna go too tight and strip out that hole, because then you're in for a bad time. But I also don't want it loose and have it falling off. So I'm probably gonna end up torquing this thing to about 20 foot-pounds, give or take. And I'm gonna put some blue Loctite on there just for some peace of mind. All right, there we go. We got the bolt followed by the lock washer going through the catch can brackets, and then the spacer goes between the bracket and the cylinder head. Got my blue Loctite on there. Gonna just put this down there and thread it into place by hand for now. Again, if you did not see which hole I was talking about, it is that one. There's a frost plug right here, big frost plug pushed into the front of the head. Right below it, off to the side, threaded hole for this bolt. The one next to it is a bigger hole that's not threaded, so you want the middle one. All right, I've got the bolt just started kind of finger tight. Another thing I wanted to mention is take note of the orientation of the catch can bracket. As you can see, it kind of bends around this harness here. So if you were to have this bracket flipped around, it wouldn't work. It would hit the harness or the head. Also wanted to say that this Allen bolt right here that holds the bracket to the catch can is a 5/16 Allen. I just gave mine a quick hit. I put the 5/16 on the impact here, and I just hit it once just to make sure it was tight, because I don't want that coming loose either while I'm driving. Another tip I would say, if your truck is more than like a year old, it wouldn't hurt to put that bolt in all by itself without the bracket first. Just run it all the way in until it stops, and then back it out. That'll clear out the hole a little bit if you got any corrosion or rust or anything built up in there, some crud. Otherwise you might have a hard time threading the bolts if you got like a 5-year-old truck at this point. All right, and as you can see, I have just a 13 millimeter deep well socket with a 3/8 ratchet on it just to snug up that bolt. Make sure, obviously, because it's only one bolt, this bracket can kind of rotate. Make sure it's, you know, kind of straight up and down. I made sure that it was not hitting that harness. It looks like it is, but it's not. I assure you, I can move it that way just a tad if I need to, but it is clearing that harness. So essentially, as you can see here, what's going to happen is we're going to have a hose running from the PCV into the catch can. that means it's going to catch, as all the air flows through it, it's going to catch the oil particles and all that, and then the air is going to continue back on from the catch can to the throttle body here, and voila. The spacer provided probably could have been a little bit thicker. As you can see, the harness is just barely touching the catch can body back here, but there's not a ton of pressure on it. I'm just going to keep an eye on it and make sure that, you know, you don't want your main wiring harness to your engine rubbing through. That would never be good. So just kind of keep an eye on stuff like that. Now, as with my normal shenanigans, I'm sure people are going to say this is way overkill, but like I said, I just want everything to be reliable. So the instructions actually say just to tighten the bolt down. They don't give you a torque value. I'm starting with 20 foot-pounds here because it threads into aluminum, as we remember. I think I'm going to step it up to 25. All right, there's 25. Now, if that bolt threaded into steel or iron or something like that, I'd probably say go ahead and do it to 30. I know that bolt could handle 30 foot-pounds, but because it goes into aluminum and I don't want to snap a bolt, I'm gonna leave it at 25. With that lock washer and the Loctite, we should be good. All right, so now we can remove the factory PCV line running here up to there. Now there is a little clip that we have to undo right here. And I believe you just stick like a little flathead screwdriver in there and pry up on that little clamp, and it should release itself. So I'm gonna grab a little flathead pocket screwdriver right now. All right, so all you're gonna do, and you can maybe do this by finger if you got long enough nails and strong enough fingers, but you're just gonna get behind, this is the top of the clip. You're just gonna get behind this little finger right here, and you're gonna kind of lift up and towards the passenger side of the truck. Yeah, man. There we go, I think. Yeah. Now you can just open it up like that and pull the line out. There we go. You can just clip this clip back together after you get the line out and leave it there for now, in case you want to return it back to stock at some point. And then that way you don't have to cut the zip tie to get the clip off. Just leave it. All right, next we're going to remove the PCV line from the PCV valve. Now, I'm going to try this by hand first, but some people were saying you got to use like a pliers on here to kind of work the little rubber boot there back and forth to break it loose. Something like this. Obviously, I'm not squeezing hard enough because I'm having a hard time reaching it right now, but just if you can't get it by hand, all we're trying to do is get a little twist out of this to kind of break the seal loose and then pull the rubber boot off of the PCV valve. I actually found just a regular pliers to work best for me with the angle and the amount of room that I had. As you can see, the rubber boot's just twisting now on the plastic fitting for the PCV valve. Should be able to pull, there we go, pull this rubber off now. Whatever you do, don't reef while you're twisting with the pliers. Don't be too aggressive with it. You just want to bite hard enough to grab the rubber and get it to twist on the plastic. You don't want to break that plastic fitting off, otherwise you're doing a whole new intake manifold probably. Now on the front side of the hose here, we're actually going to remove the hose out of the rubber, and we're going to leave this rubber hooked up to the throttle body. So we're gonna do the same thing. If you need to pinch it with the pliers to twist it or whatever. Now that I have the other end free, I just kind of do this. As you can see, I broke it free there and pull it right on out. That was a lot easier than the other side, to be honest. And as you can see, there's some oil on it and in it, and it just smells like, you know how gasoline engine oil smells when you change it? It just smells kind of like gas. So this is what we're trying to eliminate, is this crap going back into the intake. Sorry, my camera won't focus here. Now we're gonna take the longer of the two hoses provided. Again, I just got the cheapest kit, so it comes with just this hose, not any stainless braided, anything fancy like that. It's gonna go from, it's the longer one, it's gonna go from the PCV valve to the back fitting here. And while we're at this, I just want to say this is basically the only thing I don't like about this kit so far that I've noticed, and that's they gave me a DOT air brake line. This is what we use basically to make air brake hoses for the semi trucks at my work. This is not rated for oil, and guess what goes through it? Air and oil. So over time this might swell up, it might get softer and start to break down. So just know that going into this, that you might have to replace with a higher grade hose down the road at some point, or just keep an eye on your hoses to make sure that they're not getting weak and broken down by the oil. So we're going to go ahead and just push the one end on, Ugh. Well, this hose has proven to be one tough cookie. I'm having a hard time getting it on there. It's just a tight fit. And I don't have anything to lube it with, so what I actually did is I pulled my engine oil dipstick out, ran my finger along it, and just coated the inside of the hose and that plastic fitting a little bit with some engine oil. And we're gonna go round two. All right, a little lube goes a long ways. I actually couldn't get it quite on all the way. It could go like another 1/8 inch, but that's as far as I could get it. It's a tight fit. Also, I misspoke earlier when I said that the long hose is gonna go to the back fitting. As you can see, the hose is much too long for that. In theory, you could do it that way. Just make sure your other hose is long enough to go from here to there. But you'd probably have to cut this down if you hooked it to here. Instead, we're gonna go make sure that this hose is on the outside of this, so it's not gonna interfere with the engine cover or nothing. And it's gonna hook to the front barb fitting here instead. As you see, the bracket moved a little bit, even though it's torqued down to like 25 foot-pounds. Make sure to kind of support the fitting as you push it onto the barb fitting. And there we go. Now we just have to run the short hose from here to there, and we're gonna take the supplied barb fittings to do so. Now they actually provided 2 brass fittings. I'm not sure why. We only need 1, and brass isn't cheap, so doesn't say anything in the directions about the second one. I don't know if it's some sort of spare, if it was a packaging mistake, but we're gonna take one of these, plop it in the end of the short hose, and finish this up. All right, there we go. If you're having a hard time pushing this in, or if the barbs are hurting your fingers, I just kind of got it in there started, and then made sure that I was pushing flat on the ground and just pushed the hose down onto it. Worked pretty good. And now I'm gonna take the hose and feed it underneath the other one that we just put in, and just push it into this rubber boot that goes to the throttle body, like so. And now you can kind of line up. As you can see, this hose is like 1.5 to 2 inches longer than it needs to be. You can choose to either leave the excess hose on there and just shove it on, or you can cut it short. Up to you. I'm just gonna shove it on there because if you cut it short, I think these hoses might chafe on each other a bit, and I'm an OCD neat freak like that where I don't want stuff rubbing. It bothers me. So I actually just left that slack in the short hose. It's all the way on, and there goes the catch can moving again, and there we go. I like that. As you can see, hoses are not rubbing on each other. Now, looking at this kit online, I even picked up a set of like 4 hose clamps here because I was like, well, I know it's barb fitting, but I don't know how tight the hose is going to be, and again, OCD, so I got clamps to put on here. But I'm telling you, after pushing all this together, this one, and definitely that one back there do not need clamps. The loosest connection was actually the brass fitting going into the factory boot here on the throttle body, and honestly, it wasn't that loose. If I start seeing a bunch of grime or oil dripping out of this connection or any of these connections, I'll probably add hose clamps for now, but as of right now, I'm not going to do it. It's not worth the time and money, honestly. And I'm not worried about the eyesore factor of the hose clamps either, which is also why I went with just the raw aluminum catch can, is because I don't ever have my hood open or anything, so like people aren't going to be like, oh wow, look at this. You know, it's just here for function purposes only. Torque this one more time with my OCD because the stupid thing moved. This is 30 foot-pounds now, by the way. I wasn't satisfied with how it moved so easily at 25, so I set it to 30, but I definitely don't recommend going above 30. Do that at your own risk. All right, so I'm just gonna reach down here and unscrew it. It holds a fair amount. I mean, I would expect you can go about a full oil change without emptying it, but I'm gonna check it after like 500 to 1,000 miles and see what we have. We'll do a follow-up, see how it's working. As you can see, it's bone dry right now. Just kind of wanted to take it apart, make sure everything was how it should be, make sure there's nothing inside the catch can as far as packaging or anything like that. Thread this back on, make sure you get it a little snug. I mean, there's an O-ring on here that, as you can see the last couple turns here, it made it get a little harder, and there's some knurling on it to help you grab it. I'm not gonna go full Tony on it and make it so I can't get it back off, but you know, you want it snug. You don't need to take a pipe wrench to it, but snug so it doesn't fall off. Now all that's really left is to put the engine cover back on. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make sure, see, that's loose. Just gonna snug it up. It just threads in. I don't know if you can tell right here. There's this little tiny metal clip that goes over this bracket, and this just threads into a little metal clip. So you don't want a reef on it. You just want it snug. That's why it came loose when we loosened it, is because it wasn't very snug to begin with. I'm gonna say that's plenty, and I'm gonna go over to the other one, do the same thing, just a little bit, and we're good. I mean, for those of you that like an exposed engine, you could just leave the cover off, but so now we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna line up our two little plastic dowels with those two rubber boots at the back of the manifold. You got to line those up and push them in first, and then you can drop the cover down. Now, believe it or not, putting this puppy on was actually probably the hardest part of the job, because you can't see the tabs once you're so far back. Even like from the side of the truck, you can't see it. So my advice is to kind of tip the front end of it up like this and just kind of push back. You can guesstimate where you need to go and just kind of blindly push the cover around until you feel it push back far enough into those rubber grommets. And then you can drop it down, and if you've done it correctly, everything should line up. Oil fill cap should be through the hole, and we can reinstall our two 10mm bolts. Don't have a torque spec for those. I would say no more than like 10 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna cinch them down with the Milwaukee. And that is that, guys. Hopefully you've stuck with me so far. Again, sorry for this interruption, but I figured this is just easier than remaking the entire video. So this is the connection in question here. This, of course, does work, but I think the way it's supposed to go is you take the rubber boot off, that hard plastic line that went from here down your throttle body. You take the 90-degree elbow off of it, and you put the elbow onto that, and then you put the brass fitting between the elbow and that hose. So we're gonna go ahead and try that right now. So the hose is disconnected from the PCV, which of course it was just as hard to get undone as it was to push it on, probably because I was supposed to do this part. So we got the elbow here. As you can see, one end has like these grooves on it, the other end is just smooth. They kind of look like they're the same inner diameter. Let me see. The end without the ribs on it is smaller. So we're gonna put this end here, the one with my yellow marking, we're gonna put that on here and then slip our brass fitting into here. Or if you're having trouble getting the brass fitting in, you can go ahead and put that into here first before you push this onto the PCV line. And now, since adding this elbow in the fitting is gonna shove the hose back more, you'll either have to trim it shorter or go ahead and like tuck it forward like that. But make sure, see down here, it's rubbing on the coolant sensor. I think that's coolant sensor, temp sensor. You don't want the hose rubbing on the wires right there. So I'm gonna try to hook the hose to this little clamp here that the old line used to run through, and see if that helps hold it in place, and then just run it on the inside of this post here and hook it up like that. All right, there we are. The easiest way I found to assemble this, by the way, was to push the brass fitting into the elbow, then push the fitting and elbow onto the hose, then hook the elbow to the PCV, just because if you try and do it the other way around, it's just too much reaching and you lose a lot of leverage trying to push with your hands. But the clamp for the factory hose was a little too small as expected, but it is kind of cradling it. I don't know if you can see that. Kind of halfway around it, and I think this is a good middle ground. It's not rubbing on anything over here really, it's just kind of resting on the fuel rail, but nothing extreme, and then no rubbing on the wires up there, nothing. So that is the way I think it's supposed to go. I don't have the directions anymore, I threw everything away, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's supposed to go. That's the only reason I can see needing two brass fittings. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Again, also now you already know how to put the engine cover back on at this point, so you should be all set to go now. All right, and now we can reap the benefits of our oil catch can. We'll check on that. All right, guys, so I just quick wanted to show you this. I I reset the trip. Oh, wrong way. There we go. 160 miles on this tank of fuel. And then I have probably another 50 miles worth of going to and from work. And since I installed the catch can, and I'm just gonna see if we got anything yet. 8 years later. So that is after only 200 miles worth of driving. It's already doing work. It's already saving this oil from gumming up my intake. I hope this video was informative and helped you. If it did, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe for more videos like this. Check me out on Facebook at Tony the Truck Guy. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.